On today's episode, I'll be reviewing my first album, so stick around. Hey everyone, it's Michael Douglas. Welcome to Dr. Pundit, where we talk about music, not medicine. And on this edition of the show, we'll be doing my first album review for Dr. Pundit. Fittingly, this series is called the Album Review, where I take an album I like, hate, feel indifferent about, I suppose, and talk about it. Because if you're really interested in the album, you'll be interested in what I have to say about it, right? If you're interested in checking out the album, same theory applies. So sit back, relax, and we'll get into it in just a second. At this time, I want to tell you to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, if you've looked at prior videos. And it basically pushes the show and the episode up in the algorithm. More people on YouTube discover it, and it has a ripple effect. It allows me to continue to give you content that hopefully will get better with every episode. So please like and subscribe. Now let's get into it. This edition of Dr. Pundit, the album review, we're talking about the Nightfly, the seminal 1982 album by Donald Fagen. And it's an album that I think is quite fitting for me to talk about on an initial series introduction, like the album review, because not only it's an album that I think I like, but I think a lot of people like it too, for a lot of varied reasons. At only 8 tracks, this is a very cohesive, tight album. One could argue that it is a concept album that evokes exactly what Fagen was trying to evoke from it. We'll talk about that in a second. So The Nightfly was released in 1982. It was nominated for Grammy-winning Album of the Year. Did not win, it lost to Toto 4, which over the past 4 decades, I think has turned out to be a superlative album. And if I had to choose an album for the Nightfly to lose out to, it would be Toto 4. But I digress. Let's get back to the Nightfly. This is an album at only 8 tracks, introduced Donald Fagen to the world as a solo artist. Outside of Steely Dan, where he had a very impressive body of work that up to that point ended with a 1980 album, Gaucho. Of course, he and the late Walter Becker were continuing to tour well beyond the release of this album and into Donald Fagen's solo career and subsequent solo albums. So this wasn't a one-off thing. It was an album that I think he put a lot of time into and really wanted the listener to take away what I think he was trying to evoke from the album. The overall sentimentality of the album is mid-century, 20th century America, late 1950s, early 1960s, where there was this constant threat in the Cold War of nuclear war and those things, and how he was just trying to make sense of it all. And he does it through these 8 tracks. So what are they? IGY, What a Beautiful World, Green Flower Street, Ruby Baby, Maxine, New Frontier, The Nightfly, The Goodbye Look, and Walk Between Raindrops. The Nightfly, again, definitely showcases Fagen's lyricism, his composition, his production, and they all kind of coalesce into this masterpiece of nostalgic lyrics, and it's just a tremendous album. So here's my review encapsulated of each track on that album, starting with the first track, IGY, What a Beautiful World. This was a song that was released as the initial single, subsequently the highest charting single, and I think it's a good track to lead off the album. The track sets a very hopeful, optimistic view of that era that he's trying to get across, and I think it does it very well. He gives a utopian vision of the future in this song, in spite of what is happening in the backdrop in the mid-20th century, and he does it with a touch of irony and social commentary. What a beautiful world, yes, but really is it? All of this other stuff is going on behind it. A great track to start off with on the album, IGY, What a Beautiful World. IGY actually stands for International Geophysical Year. Number 2, my favorite track in the album is a track called Green Flower Street. It's kind of an homage, I guess, to his growing up, his neighborhood at that time, where he paints the local color of the neighborhood through other characters he interacts with. The instrumental arrangements are very picturesque and only add to the local color. And it's a vivid picture of how he grew up, encapsulated in a sub 3-minute song. Green Flower Street, of course. The second track on the album, my favorite, but again, that's an album with 8 standout tracks. The third track on the album is a song called Ruby Baby. It's a Lieber and Stoller classic that he kind of redid. And he adds an overall sense of depth and soulfulness to this track, the slowest track on the album. Not my favorite, but I think a good track that sets the pace for the rest of the album. A nice mellow track. Not too much more to say about it. Ruby Baby, track number 3 on the Nightfly by Donald Fagen. Track number 4, Maxine. A very kind of slow churning ballad where there's just slight melancholy in the lyrics. The atmosphere and the introspective lyrics create a mood in which he looks inside of himself, and at the same time it's evocative. It gives you a sense of what the artist feels inside. Maxine, great track, 4th track in the album, an essential track, not my favorite, but a very good song that I think gets to the midpoint of the album and is a good midpoint between the start and the ultimate end of the album as well. And actually, if you were to kind of look at this as a vinyl album, the first and second side, I think Fagen does a really good job of transitioning between the intro second side and the more kind of upbeat, let me explain this whole album to you second side before it ends. And the first track on the second side would be New Frontier. Of course, that's the album track that most people know about outside of IGY. Didn't do as well as that, but I think it's quite, if not more memorable because of the video. If you go on YouTube, do a search for New Frontier by Donald Fagen, you'll see where he is with his girlfriend, his paramour. They're getting ready to stock up their subterranean fallout shelter because they don't know what's going on, but they make the most of it. This is a new frontier. And it's got a catchy chorus. The sound is catchy. The video does a really good job of capturing the lyrics, declarations of the cultural shifts that were going on at that time in America from, say, 55 to 65. Soulful delivery. It actually, I remember when I was growing up, I heard this track on our local kind of quiet storm R&B station. And this was probably around 1984, 1985, and they were playing it at that time. Fagen's 1982 track, New Frontier, definitely essential to the album and a great kind of intro track to that second half of the album. After that track, there's the Nightfly. The Nightfly is the title cut from the album. And if you look at the title, or if you look at the album's art, it's got Fagen there. He is this overnight jazz DJ cooped up in this broadcasting booth where he wants to be there, but he's got all these things going through his head. He's trying to not only play, I think, what people want to hear, but he's trying to put his spin on it, his own commentary through the music. And the lyrics to the Nightfly, again, an overnight DJ, jazz DJ during that era, is one of a lot of jazz influence in the song. So it's a laid back, smooth groove where Fagen takes the role as the storyteller on the album. If you take into account the album's art with him on the front, the lyrics of this song, The Nightfly, the title cut, I think you get the gist of what he's trying to do with this album. He's showing you, the listener, that he can tell the story through the album. It's kind of convoluted, I guess, but I get it. I think that makes it more charming and just another compelling reason to listen to this album, The Nightfly. The penultimate track is The Goodbye Look by Donald Fagen, and it blends, for the first time, elements of rock amid all the jazz, and I think he does a pretty good job of that. He creates an emotive vocal landscape, and there's a guitar solo in the song that I think adds to the themes of paranoia and disillusionment in the song, giving the song depth. A very good song for the next to last track on the album, The Goodbye Look. And it delves a little bit into some darkness, but not much. Fagen kind of puts you in there and then takes you back out of it just in time for the last track of the album, called Walk Between Raindrops, which I think is a fitting track for the end of the album. It's upbeat, it's optimistic, and it's like Donald Fagen is telling you, hey, whatever happens, happens. I think my life is great. I think the music I'm listening to is great. I think the culture and the country is great. And if you just kind of walk between the raindrops and come out on the other side, things are going to be okay. And it leaves the listener with a hopeful and promising feeling, I guess. And that is the last track of the album, a song called Walk Between Raindrops. Again, Dr. Pundit, my review of the Nightfly 1982's intro of Donald Fagen as a solo artist to the rest of the world. And it's a slam 5 out of 5, 5-star album. I might introduce ratings, I guess, in this show. This album certainly deserves it. And if you like what you see here on Dr. Pundit, please like and subscribe. I want to bring more of this to you. This was the initial album review. Couldn't think of a better album to review. The Nightfly by Donald Fagen. As the late great Barry White used to say, let the music play, and I'll see you back next time for another episode right here on Dr. Pundit.